This must be number 15 or meeting number 15 or 14. I'm not sure anymore. Because we skipped last week. We couldn't meet last week. And got agenda. I'm going to share my screen. Maybe Emans is coming. Maybe Goro is coming. I'm not sure, but let's start. And if they join, then they join. Great. If not, they can watch the video.
Oh, wait. And this moment, not.
Oh, someone new. Hello there. New person.
Hello, Lee.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
I made it, though I thought it was in an hour, but I checked the insurance now. So
Well done. Yeah. It's your first time here, oh, isn't it?
yeah, it is the first time.
Yeah. Nice to see you. Nice to see that more people are coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's all right. And then, yeah, there are some people who are always late, so we'll just start. Okay. So rapidly moving through agenda, because there's so many things to talk about. Number one, actually, the issue number 5 or 95 inside the ATK core is closed. Yeah, because there was this discussion about how we can detect whether the object has a trade or not. And currently we're using properties. Another approach is if property implements an interface, and then we can check for the interface on the class, which is probably what other frameworks are doing.
Yes.
It sounds maybe a little bit better because I'll explain why. So in PHP Storm, when you have a construction where you say if X instance of Y, and then brackets open up, and then inside you put some code. Within this code, the editor assumes that the X is in fact an instance of Y. So, but I'm not sure how that would work with trades and how it would work.
For what I see on contracts translation of Symfony, they prepare a trade and all the public method to implement the interface are something like linked to help the implementation. And doing that is much easier even when you start a project or something to have only the interface, only the public methods, and you start to figure out how they can work together without going deep in the functionality, protected and private of the classes. But you will see.
Well, yeah, my opinion on this is whatever we have right now works. If someone wants to spend time and refactor it, then I don't mind. But I myself, I can't do it. So, and I don't think it's that important. We're not gaining anything.
No, yes.
Yeah, so, okay, moving on to the next point, which is translations. And thanks very much, Francesco, for all the work you did on in there. No, I think, it was bigger at first, but then, we kind of have like 3 files now. And I was wondering if we could have 4 files instead. So regarding my last comments in there, does it make sense for the translation?
Oh yes. I get the one of the last comment of Lee, and I try to explain much better what I want to accomplish. You get the point, and I want to specify much better what I was thinking, because I try to respect all the idea. I mean, okay, we use it in app scope, We use it in data, and we use even out of ATK. This is what we stated before.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it.
So I don't want to. Okay. Because now I talked with you in chat. We talked directly, but others maybe they haven't seen our conversation. So what I told you in chat is that we only need one trade technically, and we need some sort of very basic translator which can be used as a default, but the core doesn't necessarily have to fall back to that default. It would be the job of ATK UI, which introduces the app class, to properly initialize that fallback. Also, when we're looking into something like service factories later on, we can think about how it can be automatically initialized and how using can override using the configuration files. But because we don't have that at the moment, we have to assume that when the application class is built, it will have this translator in place, and we shouldn't worry too much if it's not there, because we'll deal with it later. We'll make sure it's properly populated. And for now, if the translation is not there, we can just output something. Okay, as long as it maybe just the same message. My goal is not to create too performance-wise. It shouldn't be too punishing if someone uses something without the application. So yes, my last comment was, so we have 3 files right now in pull request, and it is to split up translatable trade. So a little bit which would contain translatable trade, and essentially this method over here. And the job
I cannot see your presentation. You are presenting?
Yeah, let me check. No, it says you are presenting. Yeah.
Well, I can see it, so.
Okay, I have only I have some problem. Oh yes, I see you. I see you now. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, we have this method over here, which will be available in all of our classes, including form, including the model, including the field, and everywhere else. And the only thing it does, it will redirect the execution to the app, and then have some sort of reasonable fallback. But not like this, because this introduces a lot of overhead. So
yes. I stated before.
Yeah, so it could be just no return. If we just return the ID here, that was my proposal here. I think that at least it will work for our translations. And if someone builds some other translations, they can make sure that the API or the app is always available. And then the other methods, which is like get translator, set translator, and the property of translator, this needs to be moved into a separate class, which we can initialize from the application. But it shouldn't be inside a trade. It should be something separate, so that people can extend that, make sure it implements an interface or whatever, replace it with symphonies, because it looks like it could be compatible with symphonies. But we only need something very basic. Just so that's it. I think so. Bottom line is, I think we're close. Let's finish that with those changes, and we're ready to merge.
Okay. I don't understand the last. When I said okay, it was on KO, and I don't understand. Sorry.
So what I was saying is, I feel that we're very close. So, and
yes.
Yeah. So I agree with that. Now fallback can just
Yes. Was the first implementation, and after that, I had fear of entering the first condition, the second condition, but it was my fault there.
Yeah, it's okay. No, but the general rule, and I also was putting a couple of links between my comments in here and implementation of debug trait, because from my point of view, we need to make sure that everything is consistent. If something is implemented in one way already in one trait, it should be quite similar in another trait. And also we want to go as minimalist as possible, because there are powerful translators out there. We just let them do the translation job, and we just do the absolute minimum.
Okay, you mean that the translator trait from the contracts of Symfony will not be implemented completely. We implement only the strictly necessary to translate the basic of the app UI. You understand, okay?
So let's quickly look at this. They have two traits. The first one is
yes, that.
Yeah, let me see.
Don't they just have one trait though?
That's not it. So interface, translator interface. I think that's the one. So they have this interface, and it only implements this function trans. And I think that's something we need at the minimum.
Okay.
And if Symfony, because I looked at the Symfony's translator, it has so many features. You can add different files. You can add locales, lots of options, and that's great. If these are available, that's great. But we only need this. We don't need anything other than this. Just to have trans.
Well, yeah, but this interface is so simple. It just could be implemented as is, probably.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what we're going to have. We're going to have our class, which implements just this one method. And it will, work in a very basic way. So I think Francesco have removed a couple of classes right now, so they're not in the pull request. Loading of translation files. You can now probably bring that class back, but make sure it's absolute minimum, and leave on all the advanced features for the Symfony. The most important thing, I believe, is that to make sure that it can find the right translation. So we have to think. Let's say I'm adding a third-party add-on into my class. Then the namespace resolution will allow me to find the file, but how will it find the translations for that file? And maybe if we're storing those translations in PHP format, which I actually quite like, we can use the autoloader to locate the file and load it up.
I don't know if that's such a great idea. I mean, I can actually speak a little bit about this, because I've basically put ATK as the base of our new CMS, and so we have ATK core, UI, and data, and all this other stuff. And I actually went through all the files and translated everything. So after looking through about 90% of anything that would ever display anything to the UI, basically anything in data, UI needs to be translated, because those have things that will be displayed. And And I don't know, just loading from the PHP file seems kind of mediocre, I guess. It depends on how many languages you would have and how updated they would be as well.
Well, let me just explain what I mean by loading from the file. So if you're using translator like this one, you have like to add resources. Let me see. So I don't know what it is. You kind of include, so there are these PO and MO files which have these binary translation formats, and the more advanced translators will support that. I'm just trying to see here. Yeah, but they also support YAML and PHP, so they support PHP files. And for us, this is the easiest because we don't create any extra dependencies if our localization files are stored as a raw PHP arrays. We can easily load that using the correct namespace. Locate that from inside the add-on, and it should work.
I mean, it's not a terrible solution, but wasn't there like a version of the pull request that had the config trade and that would load files as well?
We have
there a version of it?
Yes. IML, JSON, PHP, PHP inline.
Yeah.
Can be every of these, but I think the problem here is another one. I mean, if an add-on is as a configuration for the translation that is strictly to Symfony translator, and in the app there is no such thing. You have to implement it, and if the translation must be loaded in some way that is different, we need to provide a translation standard. I mean a minimum translation for app UI, and full translation with something compatible with the Symfony UI, the Symfony translation.
Right.
Well, how about this? Why not make add a variable to the trait itself, the translated trait or whatever, that will store the string to this specific class that you can override if you're making your own class with your own functionality and your own translations, and that will have to be compliant maybe to even the Symfony loading format or the ATK loading format if you define one. Either one will be fine.
So that's more a question of the factory's service factory. But it's about drop-in replacement. So look, what if we do this? So if we say that we will provide the translation files inside ATK and inside all other add-ons, but they will only work with Symfony translation, and we will not going to include our own translator. So our internal fallback will simply keep everything in English. However, if someone wants to use a different language, they will have to add dependency for Symfony, and then they will be able to switch the language.
I mean, that would be better, I guess. I'm not exactly one for adding more dependencies to projects, but
it will be optional, yes. But it will only because there is the people who would like to translate ATK in projects. Let's say maybe not everyone, but let's say 50%, then it should probably be optional.
I mean, I am slightly bothered by that low number, but okay. I mean, I don't really have a problem with including Symfony as a dependency if you want to do it that way. It would be required anyway, because if you wanted to create something that would use the Symfony traits and the Symfony translation interface, it would still get uploaded, so you would need to have it included, or else you would just fatal error on start. So it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
So you would also need to think about this, like how do you want to make this an optional dependency if every class, basically, because every class would need to use this. It would need to be used by
that's what the trait is for, right? So we have translatable trait, and the only thing you have to do is inside this method over here, you have to check if the Symfony translator is inside the application, in which case it passes everything onto that. Otherwise, you just would do the return ID. And we wouldn't have our own translator at all, which means you just have to follow the rules of Symfony, and all add-ons have to respect that. But even if they do not, so any add-on, so if you have like maybe an add-on which really needs those translations, it can have a Symfony as a hard dependency, and then our configuration, so the application class can see if a Symfony translator is available, then initialize that, otherwise fall back and don't initialize anything. But the thing is, with ATK, so right now I want to keep the simplicity, so you go agiletoolkit.org, you click the download button, and then you can use all the basic features out of this bundle. And I don't want to take half of Symfony inside. So
obviously that would be kind of pointless. And
yeah, we want to.
I get what you're trying to do, and I think that's pretty good as an idea. But that would also create a little bit of a mess, because you wouldn't be able to reference Symfony at all in the code. You would need to go as like the classes as strings, wouldn't you?
No, but why wouldn't you want to reference Symfony? You just need to provide translations, that's it.
Well, I mean, I guess, but you would lose all code hinting as well, because you would not be able to use well, you could use it in comments, I guess. That would work. But
we have the trait, and trait acts as a proxy between all the classes in ATK and all the add-on classes and the actual translator. And if the Symfony it dies after a few years, and there's a new framework which is better, more popular, then it can start using that as well.
I mean, I think that's a fine idea. I'm just curious how you'd actually implement it without referencing Symfony just completely in the trait itself. But overall, yeah, I'm for it. If you want to go ahead, and yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, let's see. And so how do I call you, Lee?
Yeah, Lie. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay. So just thanks for the feedback in here, and just let's get the final pull request and then review that. I think we're good. So the tests here. I was suggesting that we make Symfony translation a development dependency. So when we execute the tests, the Symfony will be installed, and we're going to verify all of these cases. But for using ATK Core, it will not be a requirement. It will be more as an optional dependency.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So,
also, a question though, before we move on, doesn't that translator also take care of parsing the strings though? For like the multiple cases and so on? Or is that handled inside the trait?
Yes. The translation trait, it will parse all the arguments and give you the accepted result. Like we had, if you send correct ID or message, let's say like this, and you pass the arguments correctly, it will process it, parse, and make all the
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, you understand.
Yeah, but is that inside of like PHP, or is this like a part of Symfony though?
No, it's totally internal of the translation trait that they give to implement the translation interface. They give all the functionality to make it perfect the accepted results. But it will not load anything and make other things. I think that can be even a solution. But the other one, I mean, let's stick to the basic, and we can complicate it later, and make an add-on for it, and for the translation, and complicate there all the things that we need.
Yeah, okay. Actually, that's fine. I actually forgot that the mixed strings that have like the numbers that specify what the case is supposed to be, that's actually just the translation itself. It's not actually the string that is in the code. So it doesn't matter that that is like different, I guess. But yeah, I guess it should be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we looked at a couple of cases, and that's it. Yeah. So we will translate with arguments. Okay. So let's move on. Stan.
Okay, you can click the gist link, and we see on yours. I practically use this JSON, and I have much more scripts to analyze the code. I see from when I started to put in there more and more with the PHP stan and with the unit HTML, with the coverage active, and Firefox that will bring up the results of the coverage, I can improve much better the code. PHP stan, because it analyzes the code in a static way and show by the level. You start from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to see what can be better in the code, what it's a little bit dubbed. And from the point of view of coverage, you can see the coverage. I know there are many things that are done when you post the PR and other trick. But this is from console. Literally, it's easy to be implemented, and I see that is not used and is so powerful. Let just see, for example, metrics. I create the build report directory. I move the directory and make another report with the date plus hour time. I create the metrics and I open Firefox. I mean, with one call that is composer run metrics, I make all these things. And I know in many we can do it with the executioner and other things. But I just want to figure out and let's know to the others that there is this, and I use it a little, and I see more benefits than malefics.
Yeah. Look, we use PHP Storm, and it does all of that.
Yes, but with the console you can exit, let's say like this, from PHP Storm for the ones that don't use PHP Storm, and can be good. Even this, I mean.
Oh, I didn't actually know this, that you could do this in PHP Storm. I actually use this at work every day. But,
yeah, you have this. So there is this icon on top right. Well, it's hard to see, but it's in the run menu, so you can run your application. You can select to run all the unit tests, and you select to capture the coverage. You don't have to configure anything; it just captures everything. It shows you a list of files, and when you open the file, it highlights the lines with the red, which don't have coverage, and you can edit right away. Then you can rerun partially some of the test units, and it will add to your coverage report. So you don't have to rerun the test suite every time. It will complement it. And I used it locally quite a lot, so that works quite well for me. So probably, these suggestions are good. For me, it wouldn't be that helpful. We have the build which takes care of this. And also in regards to PHP Stan, once again, in PHP Storm, there is a quite good syntactical analysis, so it complains about lots of things. It's just a matter of fixing them over the time.
Yes, but I said in I like PHP Storm, there is these features. But out of that, you have to put plugin and other things, and there is an option, and just to let the other knows about this.
Yeah, put some tabs in here, and this would make a good article.
With?
If you just do indentation in this file, you can publish a blog post or article or something else. Sure, it sounds interesting. Maybe it will help some people. I know people who use Windows will struggle with this because you can't do this.
It's not my problem.
I don't have
they have other problems.
There's always various things.
I feel personally targeted.
I did try PHP Stan in the past, but my biggest problem with it was that it includes a lot of checks, and some of the checks I simply didn't want to have inside the repository. Don't want to follow that, so it was either too restricting to follow absolutely every check. There is a configuration possibility, so you can fine-tune which checks to exclude. But it was quite difficult to battle with them. PHP Stan is quite difficult to tell. So at the end, we use this code. What do we use? We use this thing. Oh, what's with my scrolling? Oh, I mean, it's not showing here. Well, you know what I'm talking about. It's this the automated check for PHP things. And they initially, I think they used PHP Stan as a low-level checker, but they have re-implemented. They moved away from it, so it's not being used anymore.
Okay. Yes, PHP and the others. But I just want to say about the which one are not using an hide and want to stay much lighter. This problem bring me again after someone like you said make me install Frank and for the multi-chat. And I had some problem about memory, and I said, okay, let's stick to other things. And I tried to VS Code and others, but I missed some features that are clearly a must in PHP Store. But it's not okay. Let's go to the other one.
Okay. Yes, but something like that. That's really good. And this is a good material for articles. It might be helpful for some people. If you post it, it can, some people will read it and will say, "Oh, what is this ATK thing?" And we might have more people.
Yes, I try to make clearly this with even with the PHP debug bar, and because I think it's really good because I get I get the collector for the PDO. If you see the screenshot I posted later, the last one there. No. Clearly there in the gist. Sorry, I use you today.
Right. Okay.
It will show like this. In the lower part, you can click on the variable of the select, and it will show the params. I have nothing to show because today it was a mad day. I want to prepare something. But I will make something to be used. I know Philip is interested, and to be used with the bug bar and try to post an issue or something to the guys of the bug bar to know that we are using it in ATK.
Yeah. Okay. So I see that this might be. As I commented here on your pull request, suggesting that if the PHP debug bar implements the logging interface, we can use it as a logger because that's a PSR standard.
I will see it. I will see it, but it was only a try because I had fear of not getting the Ajax calls with the variables I need. I see they have a messaging system using headers, and I like it, and it works. Nothing to.
And you could. That sounds like a great add-on, especially if we can configure and use it as example for the service locator. So you have options to use monologue. And you can use this bar, which also is good. You can, for example, you write configuration for your local machine, which uses the bar, but for the server deployment, you use monologue, and that makes a lot of sense because right now we have this issue when the monologue is hard-coded. So the configuration tokens are different, but the initialization of it is the same because it's in an app class, and that's a problem. So I think this is where service locator trait and your configuration could come in really handy, allowing us to have this flexibility to use different compatible services.
Okay, and that's the bad part. What is an add-on for you? Because I struggle in this concept, and what can do an add-on when it is initialized? I mean, what I figure out is an add-on is something that has an initializer trait to be able to be added to an app scope and container, and can message with this container. This is what I think, but I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah. So okay, I actually wanted to write maybe some sort of article about that. And in the past, we have quite narrow vision of what add-on could be. Right now, add-on can be pretty much anything. So it's just the translator from Symfony could be an add-on, right? It's just a class, right?
Yes.
And you include that. Right now, you have to add a line of code which will initialize it and plug it into the correct place. But I'm hoping with this pull request, it should be possible to like have maybe a configuration window inside your application where you can decide which of those you're going to use. And that means you can install translation from Symfony as an add-on and simply start using it out of the box. You don't have to modify the code at all. So that's quite interesting. And also I have a section here for add-ons and integration. So typically, if you look at, well, let's look at, let's say, audit for models, which has been for a while. I know, first of all, Composer obviously is needed. We need to, make sure the dependencies are there. Then typically there would be a class, something that doesn't require the UI. So, for example, this controller. In this particular case, you add it into I don't remember, but I think into the persistence, and somehow it gets the logging done of all the changes. In model, sometimes you have something like audit log, but you don't have to use that. You can use your own model. This is more like an example, and I think maybe it needs to be relocated into the demo folder instead. And use the traits to complement audit log. And then sometimes there will be a view as well, which is something like a history viewer for audit log, which does rely on ATK view. Even though ATK UI is not a dependency of audit add-on, it is a recommended package, and if you do install it, then you can use this class. So it's just a collection of different classes. Add-on for ATK is something which is very well defined in terms of Symfony components. It's just a different repository with a couple of classes that might implement several things, and you can just plug them inside your application. If we talk about SAST, then things are a little bit different there. So the only thing you need to add for the add-on to make it usable inside SAST is installation class, so installation file. This is like an ATK page. When you open it up, it relies on SAST. It will rely. It's not done yet, but it relies on SAST API. So it needs to use the OAuth first to get authorization from SAST. Then it comes back and shows you maybe a wizard of some sort where a user can make a couple of selections, and after that, it will use the API of SAST to register itself as a dependency and also register different traits or different actions or something else inside your application inside SAST.
Okay.
So other than that,
I mean, one second. The login that you use in SAST final application, let's say the one for the final client, what differ from the login that we have? I mean, one file?
No, it's the same.
Okay, I want to know this because we are working even for that, and we like to make something that can be reusable.
Yeah, the only so this is a bit of experiment I wanted to show, but I haven't done it yet. So it's the configuration file for SAST. So that means when we install the login add-on, it will create in the user app. It will create a new page with the name invoice and a specific layout. It will create some components. Components is like you register your UI classes, and then component can be added to a page, resulting in a view. also creates a new model, and again, this will be this will go through interactions. The user will be able to review that and maybe adjust this a little bit. Use a different name for the model. Here you can define action, and also say that the action is coming from trait, what kind of arguments it needs, and because it's all explained in this way, it's the user will be able to tweak it, interact, and we will be able to show it inside the UI. So this action can be linked to the button click. So you click the button, this will execute. It will know which arguments needs to be passed.
Okay.
Also, this will generate the call to model add action with all the proper arguments from the init of the user class.
Okay.
And then this is another idea. So we can technically register extension. So we have a new field class. There we go, which is called field password, which will be available. The reason why it's called rating here is that's error. No, it should be called password. So I kind of started with rating, and then you have to define a field class, like decorator class. So this is what goes into ATK data. This is what goes into ATK UI, and when the app is generated, this class will be available, and the user will be able to select this field. Also, because we'll have to use a preview differently. Yeah? So if, for example, we're doing a rating, we're saying like, it needs to be previewed as a list, which shows you 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because we cannot execute this inside the SAST application directly. It's only inside the generated apps where it will be visible. So this configuration YAML file is quite powerful. That's what we're trying to explore right now. Yeah, and that's the populating the configuration for the add-on.
Okay. But the configuration will be requested by the add-on to the add-on or to the app?
So this will end up in the YAML file, the config YAML file, and that's the one which we kind of supporting already. And add-on should be able to access this somehow and read that configuration. You, as a developer, if you do not use SAST, you can just use the YAML file and create that manually. For the SAST, it will offer you a visual ability to edit config if you want. But again, that happens through this installation wizard, right? So it's like a file you open up, which through the API will be able to access all of these parameters inside your app and manipulate them.
Okay.
So yeah, the bottom line is that the add-ons we have right now, they are very they used as is for the SAST generated application, and we don't want to do anything different.
No, because we have initializer trait and container trait, and literally everything can be an add-on if it's not defined correctly by us.
Yeah, you can use traits as you want, exactly. The only other idea was to have more hooks, maybe, but yes, I'll still have to think about that. For example, when you're adding something into the page, like accessing arguments or accessing conditions, there is a little bit of, still undefined areas.
And from what I remember, Grovan said that too much hooks can be a very big problem he experienced in the previous version of ATK, but I don't know what this is meaning, and he's not present in that moment.
Yeah, maybe. So inside the apps, you can define arguments now? and you can pick what kind of type it is, like text, but you can also pick an object, and you can select that. This page will get invoice as an argument, and if you place what do we have here? This is like an older version of that. Maybe this will work. Yeah, so you can select object now invoice, and you use the argument. So it will automatically load that specific invoice, which is passed by the argument.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a regular view, right? So when I'm putting the ATK UI card in here, this works as a regular view. Although for views there is a separate thing in SAST which is called Builder. They can show. For now, this is just for internal purposes, but maybe in the future that we'll find a way how third-party add-ons can use that as well. Okay. So these are all the things you can place on your page. The one I used right now was card, and it has this builder class. So it generates. There are 4 things. The first one is gets an internal model, which can we can kind of define the settings, like name, fields, all these things. They are stored in here. Let's use page argument. The other thing is the function which will create the UI, which normally just creates a form, and it just creates this thing over here. Then we have generate PHP, which again takes that configuration and outputs the PHP which is added to the user. Yeah, so it adds a comment over here. There's a seed, and the new class defines a variable, and so on and so on. And the last method generates the preview, and that's the code which will appear on the left over here. So just a little bit of HTML. Can use the card component, initialize, and then do the get HTML and return.
Okay.
So that's the builder. It's, as you can see, it's quite simple. We can add these to kind of implement third-party add-ons inside SAST. There is, for example, admin. There's the invoice manager. So invoice manager, if you remember, it relies on third-party component for the invoice, which is now absolutely fine. It just, when it generates the code, it has to use this ATK invoice manager here, and like pass all the parameters the user has defined. This is quite complex one, so there's a lot of settings in there. The major concern here is if we are executing the code, that needs to be executed on a separate environment and not on SAST, because we want to isolate permission so that this code will not be able to access any of SAST data.
Normally.
So just security concern. But other than that,
I think I finished my big questions.
Okay, cool. Right, so for me, next one is quick update on the fields. This was a pull request into ATK data, just not so long ago. Just wanted to make sure that you are all aware. There was a comment. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so essentially when you define an action right now, before it was quite dangerous because code like that can accidentally trigger something not nice. So in here, I'm sending a password reminder, but as a result, user becomes an admin, and that's can be quite dangerous. So actions can now, actually, they will now make sure that no fields are dirty unless you define which fields can be dirty. And in this case, you can set the values for them, and after that, execute an action, which makes it quite easy for us to have things like form. You put a sign up form on the page, and when you click the button, it will execute the action instead of simply trying to save data. Right. So now we have to look at the form and say, okay, what's going to happen when you click on the button? And if you have multiple buttons, this might be also the question that each button will execute a different action, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a possibility now. The other thing which follows up from this is an experiment, and I wanted to discuss this with all of you here. It's to define the standard actions such as add, delete, and edit, and also there is another one called validate, as actions, as the default actions of the model. And that would be quite easy to do inside ATK data. You simply have to, so the delete action is very, very simple. You just say that needs to be done on a single record, how it needs to appear, and in some cases you have to define what the callback would be. In this case, callback just executes function save when you do the edit, and the same with the action add. But the benefit, of course, is that the CRUD can now pick these things up, treat them as default actions. So being a default action, that means you can disable them quite easily. For the action, there is a property called enabled, which you can set to false, and then CRUD can read that, and it will hide the actions which are not enabled for specific model.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of things we can do, and the benefit is that as we implement more and more support for actions, also it's possible to do more things with edit, delete. We don't need to treat them as unique things. Okay.
Sounds pretty sensible.
Yeah, unification.
Yeah, exactly.
In the UI, if you remember, there was a pull request for the new card. Things like card and card deck. I think card was refactored. So there is a support for different actions, and this can be used with the edit and delete out of the box. So we don't need to have anything special inside the card to support add, delete, and edit. The other benefit is that when we have this executor concept, so when action is executing, the executor is a view which is responsible for triggering the action, and because those are extensible, now we can also make CRUD rely on them rather than trying to do something with internal virtual pages. So it just now puts these buttons there, and this was yes. We can use, for example, this event here to trigger actions from CRUD. You click on the button, and it just uses this action. So it just seems like a logical thing to do. It is quite impactful in the way that that's a lot of code is going to be thrown out from CRUD, implemented differently, but we can allow to do it in version 2.0.
Mhm.
So, okay, that's about field restrictions and those things. This is I just wanted to bring to attention to everyone. It's something I put together a long time ago. It might be outdated, but the idea is to have all the ATK UI components listed in here and move them along forward. But I just wanted to show you the columns here. So let's say recently we have implemented card, right? There's a card. Okay. It's not documented, and maybe we are okay all with the implementation, so we can move inside here. And then later on, when things are have a stable API and documented, we will put stuff in here, and then when it's stable, it's ending up being there. And the idea is that of this board is to see where currently we have problems. For example, upload field is not actually documented, and therefore it might not be stable. So we might have to look into the way how to upload files and make sure it's documented, and then move it over here. Maybe there are more components which are missing from here. Now, as you see, it was updated quite some time back. But maybe it will help us all to understand what kind of state ATK UI is in, and where do we need to work on, what do we need to document, what do we need to finalize. Okay.
Okay.
2-3 months. Yeah. I don't want to discuss. I looked at this issue a little bit. The idea is when you're executing code inside Atomic, sometimes you want to execute a rollback. I would probably throw exception and then catch it on outside. That's one thing he was proposing. In a way, this is similar to break hook. Yeah, but I'm not sure what exactly he wanted to, how exactly he wanted to implement that. So I can't comment on that. All right, I think that's it. Any more suggestions? Any more? Any other business to discuss?
My brain is full, full of new information.
Okay. Okay, then thanks everyone for attending today. And I hope I'll talk to you next week.
Okay.
Yeah, see you next week.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.